Alrighty. It is April 28th, 2025. I am Michael Winkler, and this is the Mike Wink Show. So I don't really know what I'm gonna start off with today. I'm just gonna pick a random article and jump in. So I keep hearing things about Trump's administration extorting law firms. Now, I didn't really fully understand the mechanisms by which this was happening. I just sort of heard about it. And I heard about it through like mostly trustworthy sources. It's the kind of sources, the kind of people where like typically they're well reasoned and researched. So if they're making a statement like the Trump administration is extorting law firms for free pro bono work, they're probably not saying that hastily. That's a pretty strong statement. And so there's probably some pretty strong evidence for it. I just don't know the exact mechanisms by which that's occurring. And I am about to learn with y'all, how that works. Trump forcing law firms to give millions to his political organization. Recently, the Trump administration issued multiple executive orders targeting individual law firms that have in the past represented clients opposing the administration or that have employed lawyers involved in investigations against President Trump and his billionaire friends. Trump's message is clear: pledge allegiance and loyalty to Trump or be driven out of business. One law firm has already pledged 40 million in free legal services to causes chosen by Trump and his billionaire cronies in exchange for Trump rescinding the executive order targeted at that law firm. Executive order targeted at that law firm. So wait, recently Trump administration issued multiple executive orders targeting individual law firms that have in the past represented clients opposing the administration or that involved investigations against Donald Trump and his billionaire friends. Trump's message is clear: pledge alliance allegiance. Okay, so the impact of these executive extortions extends beyond the targeted firms. They create a chilling effect for the entire legal profession, potentially deterring lawyers from representing clients or causes that may oppose the administration. $40 million fine payable to the U.S. government is oppression. But $40 million payable to Trump's political organization constitutes extorting a bribe, said Congressman Brad Sherman. Trump claims his political organization will fight for veterans against anti Semitism, but then says other projects. So the $40 million will go to whatever political effort Trump favors. This coercion sets a dangerous precedent for future administrations if left unchecked. Okay, so this article doesn't actually detail. Okay, so what is the executive order that they're talking about? Let's look it up. 7 more major law firms capitulate to Trump's extortion. President Donald Trump has extorted pledges totaling around $1 billion in pro bono legal services from 7 more major U.S. law firms by threatening to kneecap them with punitive executive orders that would bar their attorneys from federal buildings and terminate government contracts with their clients. The total number of toady law firms is now 9 of the top 100 by revenue. So, okay, so this is unlocking a bit of a memory. I remember somebody saying something along the lines of, um, that like they're revoking security clearances for the law firms and basically just acting really screwy to make it really difficult to do their jobs or impossible to do their jobs. Meanwhile, the four major law firm Meanwhile, the 4 major law firms that have stood up to Trump obtained temporary restraining orders from different federal judges in the District of Columbia, 2 of whom were nominated by Republican George W. Bush, one by Obama, and one by Biden. Last month, Paul Weiss, which ranks number 27 by revenue, worked out a deal for $40 million in pro bono hours after being named in an executive order. That deal was followed by Skadden Arps, the 6th largest, which promised 100 million in billable hours in exchange for Trump's not naming the law firm in an executive order. Trump has claimed similar deals with Kirklis and Ellis and Latham and Watkins, the 2 largest U.S. law firms. A&O Sherman, Simpson, Thatcher, and Bartlett, Milbank, Wilt, Farr, Gallagher, and Cadwalader, and Wickersham and Taft. There's so many hands, Jesus, so many ampersands. According to Trump Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Big law continues to bend the knee to Trump because they know they were wrong, and he looks forward to putting their pro bono legal concessions towards implementing his America First agenda. Wow. Big law continues to bend the knee to Trump because they know they were wrong. Oh yeah. Yep, 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 yep. They were like, let's do this thing, and then Trump takes office. They're like, wait, he got elected? We must have we were wrong. Oh, we were so wrong. Him getting elected changes everything. The New York Times reported Wednesday that Trump viewed the approximately $1 billion in promised service as a legal war chest to be used as he wishes. Have you noticed that lots of law firms have been signing up with Trump? 100 million, another 100 million for damages they've done. Trump told a gathering of union bureaucrats representing the United Mine Workers last week, insinuating that he would direct his law firms to oppose decades of environmental protection and to fight the transition to renewable energy sources. No written agreement between. So like, what's so sad is like Trump has the opportunity to break the Republican Party, right? The Republican Party has been stuck in mud, metaphorically speaking, for so long. They've been absolutely captured by this thing, like this stupid small government versus big government argument, this idea that like taxation is theft. They've been slowly going away from being a sensible conservative leaning party to more of a libertarian, uh, ideolog- uh, ideologically driven party. Um, and because Trump's coming in and sort of breaking everything, and like it's the MAGA party, right? He has full control of everything. He could be like, "All right, guys, we're getting on board with renewable. All right, this is actually a good idea." And he doesn't even need to be the guy to like take the blame for that, right? He can point it at Elon or some of the other weird tech billionaires that are around him and be like, "Oh, he convinced me. Oh, he's in charge of all this. If something goes wrong or if it goes well, it's on him. It's not on me." He could totally do all that and then have us just, and then we could we would get everybody on board to transitioning to renewable energy sources. Like, he's not doing that. He's literally doing the exact opposite, where he's fighting. He's not only being neutral in the war between renewables and non-renewables, or like even saying he prefers and thinks there's strategic value in the non-renewables. He's saying he is going to go out of his way to try and stop the spreading of renewable energy and replacing non-renewable energy. And that's just so like it's just such a missed opportunity, man. Like it could be the one thing, man. It could be the one thing where we're like, "Ah, he's so bad, he's doing all this yeah, he's bad in economics, he's bad on healthcare, he's bad on all these issues, but like he got the energy right, right? He brought back some nuclear, he brought back some he brought back some he turned he shifted the Republican Party's view on renewable energy sources from being like sycophantic towards oil and big gas interests towards being accepting towards renewables, but like no, he doesn't do that. No written agreement between any law firm and the Trump administration has been released, and various statements about their scope have conflicted. Nevertheless, these law firms' public prostration to a crude and stupid aspiring dictator is triggering widespread revulsion within the legal profession. Berkeley Law Dean Erwin Chemerinsky's reaction is typical. We should be ashamed that so many law firms have capitulated to extortion rather than fighting back and challenging the illegal policies of the Trump administration, he wrote in his column for legal newspapers. The roughly 1.3 million practicing U.S. Attorneys constitute a significant layer of the petty bourgeois intelligentsia. While tied while tied by thousands of strands to capitalism and the ruling class, many lawyers represent workers in civil and criminal cases and identify to some extent with their interests. Moreover, the study of law itself requires an appreciation of the historical development of social relationships and tends to imbue some members of the legal profession with an understanding of the importance of democratic rights. Legal firms traditionally donate substantial pro bono hours to defend against government oppression. Citing an important recent example, Quinn Emanuel Urquhart and Sullivan LLP, the 31st largest U.S. law firm by revenue, is representing Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia in opposition to the government's fascistic attempt to block his return from the Secot prison in El Salvador. Ironically, this last month, partners from that same firm were instrumental in brokering the Paul Weiss sellout deal with Trump. It remains to be seen whether Trump will now try to retaliate against Quinn Emanuel. There are scattered social media reports of attorneys leaving Trump's firm in disgust, although most are lower-level associates, and their numbers so far appear to be relatively small. Willkie Farr's longest-serving lawyer, Joseph T. Bow, however, resigned in protest, although one of its newest partners, Kamala Harris's spouse, Doug Emhoff, is choosing to remain. The cowardice of the 9 surrendering law firms contrasts with the 4 firms that so far have stood up to Trump's bullying. Tuesday afternoon, Judge Lauren L. Ali Khan issued the 4th TRO against the anti-law firm executive order, this one targeting the Sussman Godfrey LLP, which obtained the record $787.5 million settlement from Fox News for defaming Dominion voting systems in connection with Trump's baseless attempt to dispute the 2020 Biden electoral victory. Ali Khan called the executive order a shocking abuse of power. Law firms across the country are entering into agreements with the government out of fear that they will be targeted next, and that is coercion, plain and simple. Ali Khan said from the bench, adding, "The government has sought to use its immense power to dictate the positions that law firms may or may not take, controlling who law firms are allowed to represent. This immensely oppressive power threatens the very foundations of legal representation in our country." The 3 other law firms standing up to Trump, Perkins, Coy, Wilmer, Hale, and Jenner and Block, have motions for permanent injunctions pending. 24 supporting amicus curiae, friend of the court briefs, an extraordinary number have been filed in support of the law firms. The briefs were filed on behalf of over 1,000. So wait, hold on. Firms across the country are entering into agreement with the governments. 24 supporting amicus curiae. The briefs were filed on behalf of over 1,000 other law firms, although none of the 20 largest would participate. 363 law professors, 376 retired judges, active judges cannot participate. 23 prominent nonprofits, 61 media organizations, criminal defense associates, various bar associations and officials, the NAACP, Legal Defense and Educational Fund, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the Fred T. Korematsu Center for Law and Equity. One supporting belief was filed on behalf of dozens of corporate attorneys who opposed Trump's interference with their ability to retain law firms to represent their respective capitalist business enterprises. These briefs make 4 key points. First, the Constitution does not authorize the president to punish law firms without due process, the judicial branch having responsibility for policing the legal profession. Second, sanctioning law firms for representation interferes with their clients' own right to counsel, which is fundamental to the U.S. legal system as enshrined in the Sixth Amendment. Third, retaliating against law firms for the representation of clients, particularly in politically significant matters, violates the First Amendment rights of both the attorneys and the clients. All of that seems pretty logical to me. The amicus brief filed on behalf of 6 professors of legal ethics make the additional point that law firms which offer millions of dollars worth of pro bono legal services to support the White House's favored causes in response to Trump's extortion demands are themselves committing the crime of bribery, the promise of something of value to a public official with intent to influence an official act. Yeah, actually, this is a really great point. How could you possibly suss out which direction the bribery is going, right? Bribery is inherently a sort of a it's an agreement, I give you something, you give me something. How do you know which direction the bribe is going? It's almost impossible to like objectively suss that out. So that's a good point. They are effectively engaging in bribery. Only one amicus brief was filed in support of Trump's position. The implementation of a dictatorship requires the gutting of the legal system, which is why judges as well as lawyers have become targets of the fascists. To defend its own interests, the working class must mobilize in defense of democratic rights and not allow the White House thugs to run roughshod over the legal profession or the courts. Moreover, Trump alone is not the problem. He represents a malignment growing A malignment, growing oligarchy that can no longer tolerate lawyers who will muster their energy, intellect, and resources in opposition to its demands for war abroad and representation and repression at home. Wow, this is a really well written article. Who wrote this? John Burton. He uses words better than a lot of article writers for CNN or a lot of these other major places. So yeah, so it seems like he's does he I, I'll do more looking into this, but like, does he just keep releasing new executive orders naming? It sounds like he just keeps releasing new executive orders naming these law firms, like new law firms. Like, all right, he's got like a checklist of like, all right, these are the ones I want to extort. All right, did that one, did that one, did that one. All right, let's do these ones next. Like, this is crazy, and it's a really good point. The law firms that are capitulating and just giving him a bribe, giving him money, there's no way that you could suss out that they're giving him the bribe or that he's giving them the bribe. And so they are participating, they are choosing to participate in bribery. I wonder if so there's this YouTube channel called Legal Eagle who talks about some serious issues and some not so serious issues. But I saw a video they released yesterday titled something along the lines of "I'm joining with 500 other law firms to fight the Trump administration" or something. I haven't watched the video yet, but I wonder if it is if it is them signing on to this amicus brief, um, or if it's something else. But yeah, that's I heard Destiny say something that's 100% true. What happens when 2028 comes and then any Republican or conservative tries to make any point, any principled point about anything ever, right? It will be instantly hypocritical and instantly uh stupid, right? I mean, like, how can these same people complain about lawfare and like blindly assert that like the prosecutions and trials against Trump were political in nature, but then when this kind of thing happens, they're silent or they don't care? Really, what's happening is that they get all of their information from a small subset of independent media sources, a bunch of right-wing nut jobs on Twitter or Instagram Reels or YouTube or Twitch or something, and they only mention certain things very strategically, and they will blindly, without any evidence or logical backing, talk about how certain trials and certain judges are biased against Trump, but then stay absolutely fucking silent about all of this, or even probably do something as crazy as defend it. I'm sure there are some absolute fucking cretins out there just defending this from top down, saying Trump good, Trump do this. How do I make this sound good? How do I justify this? But I can't even think of a reasonable justification for this. This is so beyond. How could you possibly ever complain about the concept of lawfare after this? This is like lawfare on steroids. All right, so I watched part of a John Oliver episode yesterday discussing RFK Jr. and the HHS cuts. And I had realized that I didn't actually like there was just so much happening that and stuff happening in my personal life too. And I did not get a chance to really dive into the details. And so I'm hoping that this article, yeah, I think this article will give me a little bit more information. Trump administration's HHS cuts, creating waste and inefficiency, not eliminating them. At the end of March 2025, 6 weeks after his confirmation as Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sent notices to some 10,000 departmental employees across HHS immediately terminating their employment. These reductions in force allowed the earlier retirements and resignations of about 10,000 HHS employees, prompted in part by the government's offer of the fork in the road and the still earlier termination of probationary employees. All told, these reductions in force have shrunk the HHS staff from about 82,000, the approximate size of the HHS staff since the end of the George W. Bush administration, to about 62,000, a reduction of nearly one-fourth. The final set of staff reductions were accompanied by a document sketching the concept of a plan to reorganize the department, consolidating divisions from 28 to 15, centralizing many functions, and eliminating multiple programs. Many of the staffing and programmatic reductions at HHS and across the government have centered on stated priorities of the new administration. One may question the wisdom and public health benefits of reducing staffing around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the health of transgender people, or infectious disease control, but their appearance on the government's hit list is hardly surprising. The biggest changes at HHS, however, are intended to reduce waste and inefficiency, explicitly as a response to President Trump's February 11th, 2025 executive order creating the Department of Government Efficiency, a departure from prior efforts to reinvent government. Most new administrations arrive in DC with the intention of setting new priorities, eliminating low-value activities, and making government more efficient. Since the early, I don't want to read all this. Since the early 1900s, I don't want to read all Actually, no. Since the early 1900s, there have been over 15 such efforts. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter promised the civil service reform and reorganization would be the centerpiece of his efforts to bring efficiency and accountability to the federal government. President Ronald Reagan in 1982 convened the Grace Commission, a group of private sector leaders, and called for it to work like tireless bloodhounds. Don't leave any stone unturned in your search to root out inefficiency. President Bill Clinton's National Partnership for Reinventing Government cut some 426,000 jobs from the federal workforce during his presidency. But but the current administration's initiative differs dramatically from its predecessors. Prior efforts to reduce this, and yeah, this is important. Prior efforts to reduce the size and improve the efficiency of government were predicated on the need for an effective government. To that end, they typically began with extensive study through commissions or high-level work groups that carefully evaluated programs, reviewed personnel allocations and necessary functions, and considered efficient provision of public services. The latest effort is not that. There have been no visible efforts to assess how to improve the efficiency of programs, not before the election. Roger Severio's chapter on Health and Human Services in the Heritage Foundation Project 2025, the closest thing to a policy agenda for the second Trump administration, focuses only on eliminating programs that promote abortion and woke policies, not in any public transition documents, and not in the short period since the administration has taken office. The current weekly reasoned reorganization, accompanied by the offhand and contemptuous demolition of much of the workforce of HHS, is as logical as taking three different jigsaw puzzles, throwing out 2/3 of the pieces in each one, and trying to reconstruct the remaining pieces into a new puzzle. In combination, these efforts are likely not only to reduce the ability of HHS to improve the well-being of Americans, but to work directly against the administration's stated goals of increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of the department, undercutting the Trump administration's own goals. Take, for example, Doge's goal of reducing take for example Doge's goal of reducing waste, fraud, and abuse in public programs. Doing that requires inspectors, investigators, and administrators focused on maintaining quality, investigating unauthorized enrollments in public programs, and conducting financial oversight. It's entirely inconsistent with firing the HHS Inspector General and cutting 200 staff in the CMS Office of Program Operation and Local Engagement who are charged with guarding against fraud in Obamacare marketplaces. Or consider the secretary's goal of reducing drug prices and combating big pharma. That doesn't seem consistent with the firing of Food and Drug Administration facility inspectors and the staff in the policy division of the FDA Office of Generic Drugs, the office that develops industry guidance and approves new products. Slower introductions of generics will reduce drug competition and keep prices high. Reduced inspections of foreign producers of of active pharmaceutical ingredients will mean that generic drugs, those most frequently dispensed in the US, are less safe and less acceptable as alternatives to the high-cost drugs produced under patent. Or take the Secretary's goal of making America healthy again by ensuring that program priorities of operating divisions such as the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and the FDA are consistent with those of HHS and the President. That requires having a policy staff that understands what the programs do and how well they do it. That's inconsistent with the firing of two-thirds of the staff of the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, the unit of HHS that houses these capabilities. Indeed, the failure to make use of that resource became evident immediately as reporters challenged the secretary about the disconnect between secretarial priorities addressing diabetes, improving mental health, reducing toxin exposures, and the announced program cuts. The secretary himself noted studies that should have been cut were cut, personnel that should not have been cut were cut, and that was personnel that should not have been cut were cut, and that was always the plan. These were completely self-inflicted errors. The secretary had tools already at his disposal to help him reduce staffing and improve efficiency while promoting his own policy priorities. Instead, he fired them. Why move fast and break things works in tech but not in government? The Doge approach is improving efficiency at HHS has its roots in the tech industry, where the mantra is to move fast and break things in the tech world, a world of many competing firms that hire similar experts from a broad global pool. There are nearly 500,000 software developers in Silicon Valley alone. The cost of making personnel mistakes is relatively low. That's not true in federal government. Most units in HHS do not themselves execute on health priorities, particularly since the reinventing government effort of the 1990s. The federal government accomplishes its goals by contracting with, funding, or advising contractors, states, localities, and organizations who deliver services, field surveys, and conduct analyses. That's how the Childhood Lead Prevention Office at CDC, with just 25 staff, was able to supervise more than 3 million blood lead tests each year before it was apparently inadvertently cut in the mass firings. This structure means that there's remarkably little duplication of efforts at HHS. Just one person, now fired, in ASPE computed the national poverty guidelines. Staff who write contracts directing others to do critical work need an extraordinary depth of substantive, analytic, and managerial knowledge. In effect, they are responsible for ensuring the execution of complex and costly government programs with immediate and important consequences for millions of Americans. They must meet that obligation at one or two removes from the actual work itself. There is no pool of similarly skilled workers at any other enterprise to replace them with if you fire them first and ask questions later. Secretary Kennedy's personnel reductions and planned reorganization of HHS already threaten Americans' health, as critical programs that respond to specific needs have been cut. But the long-term consequences go well beyond those of shuttering individual programs that respond to specific needs. Kennedy has taken a sledgehammer to the department's broader capacity to analyze, track, and improve its own programs and the health system more generally. Rather than reinvent government to better serve the American people, as his predecessors sought to do, he has made government less efficient and effective. This is a very well-written article, giving very good reasons as to why what they're doing is neither efficient nor is making government neither more efficient nor less effective. It's making government less effective and less efficient. It's doing literally the exact opposite of what they're trying to do. The only thing it really achieves is cutting the raw dollar cost, I suppose. And it's probably not even doing that efficiently. But like if the program was funded for $100 million and he cuts it by 50%, yeah, it may lose 80% of its ability to do its work, but it is still cut by 50%. And they can be like, look, see, we cut, $50 million from this program or whatever. And dumbasses who don't, okay, not dumbasses, people don't, who aren't curious and who aren't really intellectually good faith, aren't going to look that up. They're just going to see cut cost. They've been convinced taxes are bad and government bad, and therefore they're just happy about that. Probably. But this article makes a really good point about the replacing of these workers. So in the private sector, it's very easy to replace a software developer or something. Even if you're in a somewhat novel software developer position or you're trying to do something novel, there's still a massive pool of software developers who I'm sure at least some portion of them have the creative problem-solving skills to achieve whatever novel thing you're trying to achieve is. But that is not the case for these complex systems. A lot of these things are like, you know, you need people to manage these things. You need people that you need oversight. And yeah, you have managers in the private sector, certainly, but like it's coming from a very different perspective. A manager in the private sector is interested in maximizing profits for the business. But a manager in one of these departments is theoretically supposed to be working in the interest of the American people, which is a bit more of a broad, abstract, and necessarily altruistic concept. And so I I think this is a really good point that replacing these people is going to be difficult. It's not literally impossible. I'm sure you give somebody enough time, they'll be able to figure out the role, yada, yada, yada. But like, it's going to be very difficult and likely a rocky, difficult transition that could be paved in blood. I mean, if the fact that they're unable to properly oversee these programs causes problems that lead to people being harmed or killed, that is a direct result of all of this. Alrighty. Let's move on. So I started talking about this a little bit before. There was something else. Wait, there was something else I wanted to talk about. What was the other thing I wanted to talk about? So I started talking about this a little bit last session, but I didn't really get a chance to finish the article and get into it in all that much depth. So I'm going to try and cover it a little bit quickly here. Um, so I've been hearing these things about like the whole Greenland situation is very strange, okay? Because and I've even in some of my my public policy classes at school, at the university, I've even heard a professor make this argument that that both the Dems and the Republicans want Greenland, and that the Republicans are Dems are being kind of silent because they're in agreement. That is militarily strategic, good. That it's a good idea to take it, basically, or that to have control over it. But what I don't get about that argument, or just all of this in general, is that like Greenland is our ally. Like we can put military bases there if we want. Like I understand what they say. Like if there was some intercontinental ballistic missile attack from the other side of the world, it would likely fly somewhere around over Greenland, and that would be a good place to put some sort of anti-missile defense system or something. That all makes sense. But do you really think that Greenland isn't going to let you do that? Like, why would you need to take all of Greenland to do that? Like, the place has like 5 people per 100,000 kilometers. That's obviously an exaggeration. But there's like nobody who lives there, and there's humongous swaths of unused land. We already have military bases there. And the government there has shown that they are interested and willing to cooperate with us and make deals and work with us. They said they are not interested in just becoming our state or becoming a territory of ours. That makes sense. They want to stay sovereign, but they are willing to work with us. So like I don't understand this idea that like there I don't really see the benefits of fully taking or claiming Greenland. It seems just sort of pointless to me. And so then I start wondering, what are the real motivations here, right? If the real motivation isn't militarily or security or something, as I've already pointed out, that they could already achieve all of those exact same things without claiming Greenland and just plopping down as many, they could probably plop down 100 military bases in Greenland and be like, fucking go whatever, do whatever you want. Yeah, I start to wonder if there's some nefarious some other reasoning going on here. And a reasoning that I heard and that makes so much sense and would fit with the ethos of this administration so perfectly, the whole everybody's just trying to make a bag, right? Everybody's just trying to make their money, to do their little grift, because this is a grifter's paradise right now. And, take the money and run. And so I think that this is, at least it seems like logical to me from what I've heard, that there's a bunch of billionaire weirdos like Peter Thiel and some of these other guys that are around Trump, that basically want their own little fiefdoms, right? They want their own little country, or as close to it as they can get. They're they have won the game of money and resources. They have more access to money and wealth and all of that than they could ever possibly use in their entire lifetime. So it sort of makes sense to me that, like, if they're the kind of person that basically won the game, you won the money game, then what's the next thing? What's the next step if you want to sort of keep grinding in that kind of way? Well, it's political power. And I think some of them understand that, like, I think Peter Thiel probably understands that he's a slimy weirdo and that he doesn't have the kind of appeal necessary to become the president. I think he himself, I would hope so, would acknowledge that there's no fucking way he could be ever become president. But he could be the king of his own little fiefdom or something, if he played his cards right. Exclusive Greenland Freedom City. Rich donors push Trump for a tech hub up north. As the Trump administration intensifies efforts to acquire Greenland from Denmark or take it by force, some Silicon Valley tech investors are promoting the frozen island as a site for a so-called Freedom City, a libertarian utopia with minimal corporate regulation. Three people familiar with the matter, Reuters told Reuters. I said this last session when I talked about this a little bit, but I'll say it again. The concept of a libertarian utopia is inherently antithetical. The way that if you asked most people to describe a utopia, and then you took what that utopia would be, and then you tried to map it onto a libertarian society, it literally is it's impossible. It's not how that works. Libertarian societies would not generate that kind of equity. It's not possible. The incentive structures are just not there. The discussions are in early stages. Oh, and I guess the other thing I'll mention is that, like, this sounds slightly similar to, and I think I mentioned this last time. This sounds slightly similar to the economic exclusion zones that you see in China, places like Shanghai and Hong Kong, and some of these major cities that are a part of China technically, but they operate under a slightly different set of economic rules than mainland China, that allows them to compete in global markets in a way that is a bit different from China. Um, and so it's not like the whole idea of having an area of your country or a city or something along those lines that operates under a slightly different set of economic rules is not like completely ridiculous or stupid. There is potentially some use case for it. But uh, that is, it is very clear that we're not in a position where, like, we have overburdensome regulations, and that is what is keeping these billionaires from doing something good. Okay, that is ridiculous. These billionaires just want to be able to pay people less than minimum wage. They want to not have to spend as much on safety equipment or regulations. They don't want they want to just be able to do whatever they want and screw as many people over in the process. The discussions are in early stages, but the idea has been taken seriously by Trump's pick for Denmark ambassador Ken Howery, who is expected to be confirmed by Congress in the coming months and lead Greenland acquisition negotiations, the People said. Howery, whose involvement with the idea hasn't been previously reported, once co-founded a venture capital firm with tech billionaire Peter Thiel, a leading advocate for such low regulation cities. Howery is also a longtime friend of Elon Musk, a top Trump advisor. Howery declined to comment. The White House did not respond to requests for comment. Sources who spoke to Reuters requested anonymity to discuss private conversations. The vision for Greenland, one of the people said, could include a hub for artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, space launches, micronuclear reactors, and high-speed rail. This just sounds like some fucking 14-year-old's wet dream. Um, I like how I described it last time. It's like you're playing one of those Sim City games, and then you did one of the cheats to give yourself infinite money or whatever, and then you can do all the late game stuff and just pack your city with, like, all the cool shit. Even though it doesn't, like, it's like, oh, I'm gonna put like 10 nuclear reactors, but no food, no restaurants. That's what it feels like. It's like they are focused on only the like 14, like the stuff a 14-year-old boy will be focused on, the cool stuff, and not the actual stuff that like makes a society function properly. Um, it just shows a level of naivete and honestly a level of immaturity. The discussions reflect a long-standing Silicon Valley movement to establish low-regulation cities globally, including in the United States, which Trump himself promised to do in a 2023 campaign video. Proponents use different names for variations on the idea, including startup cities or charter cities, with the common goal of spurring innovation through sweeping regulatory exemptions. The administration's consideration of such a quixotic quixotic quest underscores the growing clout of tech magnates and Trump's increasingly expansionist foreign policy. After campaigning on a largely isolationist platform, Trump has since his November election suggested taking back the Panama Canal, annexing Canada, and redeveloping the war-torn Gaza Strip after seizing the beachfront land from displaced Palestinians. Greenland is about 3 times the size of Texas, with a population of only 57,000, but the island is strategically important to the U.S. military, which has a base there and contains substantial deposits of minerals, including rare earths. Yeah, we already have a military base there. We can put as many fucking military bases there as we absolutely wanted to. Like, why would we need the whole thing? Trump has refused to rule out taking Greenland by military force if Denmark won't sell it. We have to have Greenland, Trump said late last month as his Vice President J.D. Vance visited the U.S. military base on the island. Vance toured Greenland with his wife Usha Vance, a visit that ignited protests from Greenlanders who overwhelmingly oppose becoming part of America, polls show. The island is owned by Denmark but governs itself. Greenland's new Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, said the U.S. visit signaled a lack of respect. Speaking to troops at the U.S. military base, Vance accused Denmark of failing to protect Greenland from very aggressive incursions from Russia and from China and other nations without detailing the alleged aggression. What? Speaking to U.S. troops in the military, Vance accused Denmark of failing to protect Greenland from very aggressive incursions from Russia and from China and other nations. Since when did Russia, China, or other nations invade Greenland? Have I missed something? This statement doesn't seem to make any sense at all. Hold on, I need to see what this means. What does it mean? Vance accuses Denmark of not keeping Greenland safe from Russia, China. Okay, how? Why? I need to see exactly what this means. Oh, is it blocking my view? God damn it. I'm not paying for Reuters. Hold on. Why did it just... What the fuck just happened? Bruh. J.D. Vance accuses Denmark of failing to keep Greenland secure as he slams European allies. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Friday accused Denmark of underinvesting the security of Greenland and claimed other European allies had failed to keep pace with defense spending. President Donald Trump has accused Denmark of underinvesting the security of Greenland. President Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed his desire to gain control of the autonomous Danish territory, describing the prospect as an absolute necessity for U.S. national security. Denmark has done a good job at keeping Greenland safe. Denmark hasn't done a good job of keeping Greenland safe, Vance told service members at the Pitufik space base in Greenland on Friday. We know that too often our allies in Europe have not kept pace. They haven't kept pace with military spending, and Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, China, and other nations with interest in this area, Vance told reporters. Wait, this is so strangely like Vance is not an idiot, right? He's been to college. He understands how to speak like an adult. So this I'm going to read this whole quote again, and I feel like I'm gonna see if I feel the same way after I read it again. We know that too often our allies in Europe have not kept pace. They haven't kept pace with military spending, and Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, keep the people. So, pause. Why is it their responsibility to keep our troops and our base safe? Okay, unpause. And in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, China, and other nations with interests in this area, Vance told reporters. I'm not claiming that some of these countries wouldn't like to have Greenland if they could. I mean, I would like to have Greenland if I could, right? I'm sure fucking anybody or any country would. Tonga would be like, oh, we can take Greenland? All right, fine, whatever. Give us Greenland. We'll take it. But like the statement, and in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, China, and other nations with interests in this area. The way he says this sounds first person, but he's talking about hypothetical in the future. He's talking about Greenland not keeping them safe from a potential future incursion. He's saying that they aren't prepared enough. But like the way he says this almost sounds first person. Like there are aggressive incursions going on and they're doing nothing about it. That's almost what it sounds like he's saying. It's just very weirdly worded. The vice president said the island was important because Pituffik would be the first to alert the U.S. if a missile was fired from an enemy country or enemy submarine at the U.S. Yeah. What I'm saying, just go to Greenland and be like, yo, homie, we're popping down like 10 bases all around your borders, some in the north, some in the south, some in the east, some in the west, so we can have a full scanning of missiles or whatever the fuck. All right. I guarantee you they'd be like, all right. We know that too often our allies. Oh, yeah. We know that Russia and China We know that Russia and China and other nations are taking an extraordinary interest in Arctic passageways and Arctic naval routes, and indeed in the minerals of the Arctic territories. We need to ensure that America is leading in the Arctic because we know that if America doesn't, other nations will fill the gap, he said. Following Vance's visit, Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said his country was open to criticism, but that they did not appreciate the tone in which it's being delivered. Yeah, I wouldn't either. This is not how you speak to your close allies, he said in a video message shared on the social media platform X. Very correct. We respect that the United States needs a greater military presence in Greenland, as Vice President Vance mentioned this evening. We, Denmark, and Greenland are very much open to discussing this with you, Rasmussen said, respecting the we respect that the United States need a greater military presence in Greenland, as Vice President mentioned this morning. We, Denmark and Greenland, are very much open to discussing this with you. That is literally them saying, we will let you put up bases if you want, homeboy. We will let you do whatever you want. Just stop trying. Just stop shit talking us and saying you're gonna militarily invade us. That seems perfectly reasonable to me, and it seems completely insane that we're doing that in the first place. Or that we're not doing that. We're America. Trump is doing that. The Trump administration, more specifically. Far-fetched rhetoric. Vance's visit comes as Trump reiterated earlier this week his desire to take over Greenland for national and international security purposes, saying the U.S. would go as far as we have to go. We need Greenland, and the world needs us to have Greenland, including Denmark, he said, referring to the island, which is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen condemned Trump's comments, saying the far-fetched rhetoric was a further escalation from the U.S. Both the governments of Greenland and Denmark have repeatedly voiced opposition to Trump's proposals, with Mut Egede, the outgoing Prime Minister of Greenland, earlier this month saying, "Don't keep threatening us with disrespect. Enough is enough." Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin this week warned that it would be a profound mistake to dismiss Trump's effort as some preposterous talk by the new U.S. administration. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin this week warned that it would be a profound mistake to dismiss Trump's effort as some preposterous talk by the new U.S. administration. Putin said the U.S. had previously offered to buy Greenland and had plans to control territory as far back as the 1860s. In short, the United States has serious plans regarding Greenland. These plans have long historical roots, as I have just mentioned, and it is obvious that the United States will continue to consistently advance its strategic, military, political, and economic interests in the Arctic. the Russian president said, "The U.S. watch looking at a translated version of what Putin's saying versus a transcript of what Trump says makes Putin look like a professor and Trump look like a fifth grader." The U.S.'s initial plan for a delegation of officials to visit the island this week was met with stark criticism from leaders in Denmark and Greenland. Danish Prime Minister um, claimed the plans were creating unacceptable pressure. The trip was shortened to a one-day event and restricted to a visit of the U.S. Pituffik space base on the island, which is located far away from the territory's cities. Denmark appeared to welcome the changes, with Foreign Minister Rasmussen suggesting they symbolized a de-escalation. Yeah, so yeah, exactly what I was saying. Greenland wants to work with us. They want to make deal with us, and they are totally willing to let us plop down military bases or achieve our strategic military goals or however you want to phrase it in Greenland. We just need to fucking ask them and talk with them. That's why I keep falling back on these nefarious reasons. That there are reasons people that there are real reasons that are sort of behind the scenes for this. And I just cannot keep escaping this whole let me getting me distracted. Let me go back to the main article we were talking about, which was this whole Freedom City thing. These billionaires wanted to be kings. All right. Speaking to troops at the U.S. military base, Vance accused Denmark of failing to protect Greenland from very aggressive incursions from Russia and from China and other nations, without detailing the alleged aggression. Yeah, exactly. You can't just make vague claims of aggression and like that they're trying to take. He's implying that they're trying to take Greenland like out from under the U.S., but has zero evidence of this. The government of Denmark declined to comment on the idea of U.S. tech investors founding a city there. Greenland didn't respond. They're probably like, I would imagine that Denmark and Greenland are like, hey, we would certainly love if money came into the country, right? If you invested money, companies came here and plopped down factories or offices or whatever. I'm sure that they would love investment in Greenland. But I would and so they're probably leaving some room for a positive conclusion, a positive investment, a positive uh, end result to all of this by not commenting, right? They could come out and be like, "Oh, we're against this idea," but I think they maybe want to leave. They want to leave their as small and remote of a possibility as it may be. They want to leave that possibility open that there could be positive, good investment coming into Greenland. But I would imagine that they have zero faith in this administration doing so for good purposes and doing so in a good way. And I would imagine that they are not fond of the whole lack of regulation or libertarian utopia nonsense. I would imagine they are very much against that in concept, on principle, as they should be. And so I have a hard time imagining this actually happening. I think this is probably just going to end up going nowhere, right? It's going to be a bunch of chest puffing, um, and then this is all just going to go away. Maybe we'll plop down another military base. Maybe they'll plop down a. The furthest I could honestly see this going would be some sort of like economic exclusion zone, a la Shanghai or Hong Kong in Greenland. So it'd be like an American version of that. But like what I don't understand about that is like the restrictions and regulations that we have here are not that burdensome. So like I don't really understand. I don't think there are that many good faith um efficiency centered skirting of regulations that would occur there. I think it's purely interested in just being able to pay people as little as they want and being able to extract as much profit as they want and be able to get as screwy with the money as they want and it's all about consolidation of power and maintaining power and money and it's I think them saying that this is about strategic military reasons is a big red herring, and the evidence of that is very clear that they've said they want to work with us. They allow us. They've said basically straight up, we'll allow you to put military bases down in there. So I don't know. This is pretty stupid. Pretty stupid. All right. So, and Vance is an idiot. God damn. All right. I'm gonna go into this a little bit more. Maybe this article will have a little bit more information. A handful. Oh, this is a long article. It's not that long. I'll read it really quick. A handful of wealthy, politically connected Silicon Valley investors are reportedly eyeing Greenland's icy shores as the site for a techno-utopian freedom city. That's according to a report from Reuters, which details a proposed effort to establish a new libertarian-minded municipality characterized by minimal corporate regulations and a focus on accelerating emerging technologies like AI and mini-nuclear reactors. Supporters of increased economic development in Greenland argue its frigid climate could naturally cool massive energy-intensive AI data centers. Large deposits of critical and rare earth minerals buried beneath the island's ice sheets could also potentially be used to manufacture consumer electronics. We don't want to bring electronic manufacturing back to the US. That's not a good idea. That's how you decrease standard of living. And the so-called none of these people have ever taken an economics class or thought about economics beyond it. I understand this tendency, right? In the United States, we're raised as a in hyper individualistic culture. We're raised in a bring yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Like your money is your money. How you manage it is your responsibility. Yada yada yada. But like that kind of thinking doesn't make sense. It makes sense in our market-based system. It makes sense and is beneficial to have that sort of mindset. But when you're talking about a top-down governmental, it does not operate the same way. And this is why it's so frustrating when people are like, "Oh, he's a good businessman, so he must be good at running the country." It is a fundamental misunderstanding of economics and very, very immature and naive to basically assert that business and economics are the same, that economics is just business on a larger scale. That is very much not the case. Economics is like, it's just not the case. And that's just a very naive way of looking at it. And the so-called startup city, which bears similarities to other ongoing venture in California's Solano County, reportedly already has the backing of PayPal founder Peter Thiel and Ken Howry, President Donald Trump's pick for Denmark ambassador. If confirmed by the Senate, Howry could lead U.S. discussions to acquire Greenland. In that role, Howry could potentially act as a bridge linking the audacious Freedom City investors with the U.S. government. When was this article released? April 10th. It's almost written like it was written before the admin came in. All of that, it's worth noting, will also almost certainly face fierce backlash from Danish officials who have repeatedly pushed back on the Trump administration's proposal to take over the Arctic island. Proposals to create billionaire-funded stateless societies around the world have been attempted over the years, but none have evolved past much more than proof of concept. Who is behind the Freedom City? The Reuters report cites claims Howry, Thiel, and prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalist Mark Andreessen are amongst the most prominent names backing the Greenland effort. Howry, who still needs the U.S. Senate to confirm his position as ambassador to Denmark, is reportedly a longtime friend of billionaire Elon Musk and formerly founded a venture capital firm with Thiel. Thiel, meanwhile, has emerged as one of the loudest supporters, both vocally and financially, of the seasteading movement, which is trying to build floating, stateless utopia cities in the ocean. What? What did I just read? That's such a stupid idea. Oh my god. Are you serious though? For real? Bro, these people are like, how can somebody look at these people and find them endearing or find them like respectable or worth listening to? It is how can somebody look at somebody who advocates for programs, cutting government programs that help everyday Americans. And then look at him as wealthy as he is, and then look at his desire to become the king of a little fiefdom or his own little seastead floating city or country or something, and not get a bad taste in your mouth? How can you not look at all of this and get a bad taste in your mouth? Or think like, "Ooh, this guy, he's not a normal person, or he's got weird motives, or he's like he seems like he's just power hungry." How do you not come to that conclusion? And furthermore, how could you possibly come to the conclusion of like, "Oh yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. Oh yeah, we should follow this guy, or this guy's got our best interest in mind." I just I- if you believe that, I just don't even know what to say. I need to read this again though. I feel like it's such a stupid idea. It reminds me so much of like when these Silicon Valley tech weirdos come in and they try and reinvent something that like already exists and already does it better. Like when Elon came in and tried to do the Hyperloop thing or whatever, and it's like, well, subways already exist, tunnels already exist, right? You're kind of your trains already exist. You're like combining all of the worst aspects of all of this. The high cost of a subway, but the inability to transport large numbers of people because it's a one lane car thing. Like it feels very similar. Teal, meanwhile, has emerged as one of the loudest supporters, both vocally and financially, of the seasteading movement, which is trying to build floating, stateless utopia cities in the ocean. Floating stateless utopia cities in the ocean. Stateless utopia. I think that's to me sounds just as antithetical as the concept of a libertarian utopia. I think if you asked most people to describe what a utopia would look like, it would basically necessitate the existence of a state. So the idea that you could have a stateless utopia seems impossible to me, or basically impossible. Andreessen, notably, is also part of a tech investor consortium, California Forever, looking to build the city in Solano County. Each of these efforts, along with others like the already existing city Prospera in Honduras, are united by libertarian political ideals, a focus on technological development, and lots of money. Rumors around the proposed Greenland city date back to at least November 2024, when Praxis co-founder Dryden Brown fired off a series of tweets explaining how he tried to purchase land in Greenland. Praxis is a self-described internet native nation, crypto startup. Wait a minute. Crypto startup with the stated goal of restoring restoring Western civilization and has reportedly received. Wait. I feel like this is just getting stupider and weirder as I go. Rumors around the proposed Greenland city date back to at least November 2024, when Praxis co-founder Dryden Brown fired off a series of tweets explaining how he tried to purchase land in Greenland. Praxis is a self-described internet-native nation crypto startup with a stated goal of restoring Western civilization and has reportedly received over $525 million in funding to start building out new cities. Brown told Reuters he has since been approached by several companies to explore establishing a new city in Greenland. Who's giving these people money? Bro, I need to see. I'll read that in a minute. I have to. All right, no, I'm gonna take I'm gonna take a pause here real quick and just see what this says. Praxis announces $525 million. Oh my God, how long is it about? Oh, it's actually the actual Praxis website. Praxis is the world's first network state, an internet native alliance to accelerate technological progress and revitalize Western civilization. More than 14,000 Praxians live in 84 countries and have founded companies worth over 40. Oh my God. This is so cringe. This is turbo cringe. This is like, this hurts my brain cringe. What? Are you serious? A central ambition of the project has been to build a new city for three central reasons: unlocking technological and scientific possibilities by forming a city in an acceleration zone with extreme talent density. We reduce regulatory barriers, enabling rapid breakthroughs in AI, crypto, biotech, energy, and advanced manufacturing. Yeah, the regulatory burdens, man. They're just so bad, man. Like having your workers have to wear a helmet, it's so bad. Oh, it's so burden. That's really what's keeping us from reaching the utopia, like 100%. If we just had that, we would be at the utopia, right? Like 100%, everybody would just get everything provided for them. We wouldn't have to work, right? Right. Of course, right? Yeah, these people want to set up a system in which um everybody's provided for and it's equitable and it's fair, right? Of course. Of course, right? Right? To show the world that it is possible to build a great city in the 21st century. Capital formation for the city has been a central focus for Praxis because it accelerates deal velocity and quality with governments and landowners. Capital formation for the city has been. As a novel project, we had to get creative seeing institutions like BlackRock commit to crypto. We designed a crypto native mechanism for financing large scale projects using tokenized real world assets. In partnership with the largest new city development project in the Middle East, Global Emerging Markets, $3.4 billion alternative investment group based in New York City, and Arch Lending, this financing primarily consisted of a drawdown facility, represents this mechanism's first deployment. Oh yeah, the Middle East is really known for its tech city projects. They've always gone so well. Yeah. Today we are pleased to announce a $525 million financing to build the next great city. With new participants including Arch Lending, GEM Digital, Manifold Trading, and more, as well as new angels including Tom Schmidt, GP at Dragonfly, Rob Haddock, Anid Pi, and Mert, Max Nava, blah blah blah. With this capital, Praxis can execute its vision of building the next great city. The city will be designed to attract entrepreneurs and foster breakthroughs in AI, crypto, biotech, energy, and advanced manufacturing by locating in an acceleration zone, a special economic zone with reduced regulatory barriers for technology companies. The culture of the city will promote the traditional values of Western civilization. These tech companies, as far as I understand, are subject to far less regulation and oversight than like most other industries or many other industries. Like industries like healthcare and law and environmental and oil and stuff like that are subject to far what regulation or regulatory barriers are tech companies putting aside I'm I'm doing the good faith thing here. All right, put aside the bad faith ones where it's just like just want to pay people less and we just want to provide less safety equipment or whatever. Put aside the bad faith ones. I'm trying to come up with good faith ones, okay? And like what are the good faith regulatory barriers for tech companies in the United States? I can't think of any. I don't. I mean, I might be wrong. There might be something, but even if you could point to something token, I don't think my understanding is that there's not some big huge problem there. City will be designed to attract entrepreneurs. Blah 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 blah. Manufacturing this. Special economic zone with reduced regulatory barriers and technology. The culture of the city will promote the traditional values of Western civilization. I don't know what that means exactly. I wonder. I wonder if it's like the same tech guys that are like wanting to be kings of their own little cities like this are like I would imagine they're less interested in like the nuclear family white picket fence no gays allowed. I would think that they're a bit less interested in that and that they're a bit more modern in their thinking, but maybe I'm wrong. I also question if maybe they put this to promote the traditional values of Western society. Like they know their audience, they know the kind of people they're trying to attract and the kind of people that would potentially invest in this sort of thing. And I think they understand that a lot of those are traditionalist conservatives who just, they believe in American folklore religion, like the American Catholicism, Christianity, which is the folklore religion at this point. They believe in an American folklore religion, or they're just anti-gay, or they're all in on this whole anti-woke stuff. That those are the kind of people they're trying to attract. So I wonder if they only add this for that. But like, I wonder how can you promote the traditional values of Western democracy in this kind of way? Like, what do you not allow gay people to get married, or no trans people are allowed, or I don't understand. That's what I'm reading into this. But I also feel like if you're wanting to build some ultra futuristic tech city, necessarily I would imagine something that comes along with that is like cultural progression, right? If your whole city is supposed to be based on technological progression and innovation and all of that, you would think that you would have the same level of like that would bleed over into the cultural. I would imagine that it would be a very liberal, very very like weird, people dressing weird, people expressing themselves in all kinds of weird ways, or different, not weird, but different ways. And so I wonder, I feel like they're wanting their cake, they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to build some futuristic, crazy libertarian wet dream city, but then also like prevent trans people from being there, or prevent people from um uh, I don't know, getting divorced, or living by non-traditional Western standards. You can't have your cake and eat it too, right? I feel like these things would work against each other. Alrighty. Oh, so I need to go back to the article. So that was really really funny. Um, where was I? Praxis is a self-described internet native nation crypto startup with a stated goal of restoring Western civilization, and has reportedly received over $525 million in funding to start building out new cities. Brown told Reuters he has since been approached by several companies to explore establishing a new city in Greenland. Why the obsession with Greenland? The idea of the U.S. acquiring Greenland, once wildly regarded as a joke during the first Trump administration, has evolved into a serious U.S. foreign policy objective. The president campaigned on the issue during the 2024 election, and has since doubled down, despite repeated assertions from Danish officials that the island isn't for sale. Nevertheless, Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha Vance visited a U.S. military installation on the island in March 2024 and delivered a speech urging Greenlanders to voluntarily cut ties with Denmark. The idea of the U.S. acquiring Greenland, once widely regarded as a joke during the first Trump administration, has evolved into a serious U.S. foreign policy objective. The president campaigned on the issue during the 2024 election and has since doubled down, despite repeated assertions from Danish officials that the island isn't for sale. Nevertheless, Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha Vance visited a U.S. military installation on the island in March 2024 and delivered a speech urging Greenlanders to voluntarily cut ties with Denmark. Recent polling shows that an overwhelming majority of Greenland residents oppose the idea of possible annexation by the U.S. President Trump, meanwhile, has not ruled out the possibility of taking the territory by force. In these situations, just like it's important when you're analyzing something Trump has done or something Biden has done, it's important to say, how would I react if the shoe was on the other foot? How would I react if Trump did this? Or how would I react if Biden did this? How would I react if Harris did this? So that you make sure that you're being objective and level headed with your analysis. The same thing needs to be done in this kind of circumstance. Imagine if you had somebody from China come into a U.S. state and be like, "Hey," and then you had a Chinese official come to Alabama and start making public statements, or have a public hearing, or do something along those lines to start signaling, or literally telling straight up American citizens in Alabama, "Hey guys, you should revolt against Alabama, against the U.S. government, and come defect and join China." Imagine Imagine if that happened. Okay, if that happened, conservatives would lose their fucking minds and would be calling for literal war would be calling for World War III. So like this is it's really important to be level-headed and objective about this, and to understand just how insane it is for him to be there saying these things. So why all the obsession with a mostly uninhabitable island with a population of around 57,000? Supporters of Greenland development laid out their arguments during a Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation hearing earlier this year. During the hearing, Texas Mineral Resources Board Chairman Anthony Marchese claimed Greenland's coastline holds what is indisputably one of the greatest collections of minerals found in a single jurisdiction. That includes rare earth minerals, which are crucial to powering a plethora of modern consumer electronics devices. Throw a dart at any part of the coastline and you will surely hit a world-class mineral target, Marchese said during the hearing. Most of those minerals are currently buried beneath thick sheets of previously impenetrable ice. But supporters of investment in Greenland argue that new mining techniques, combined with the melting of some ice due to a warming climate, could make those once inaccessible minerals within reach. Others, like U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell, say Greenland's cool temperatures and proximity to geothermal vents could make it an ideal location to power the massive data centers needed for AI. In theory, that combination of cool temperatures and access to energy could be attractive for tech companies looking to rapidly ramp up computing capacity without relying on fossil fuels. Brown, the Praxis founder, also told Reuters he believes Greenland's harsh topography could make it an ideal site for experiments aimed at replicating the surface of Mars. So, just like with the military base argument, there is absolutely no reason they couldn't. This is a silly point to make. There's no reason they couldn't be doing these surface of Mars scientific experiments already. Greenland has very clearly indicated they want to work with us and make deals and do basically whatever we're wanting to do, short of annexing them. So the idea that this is for some specific purpose like that, I feel like is really misleading. Um, just like most issues, there's a lot of conflicting incentives here. And I think while the weirdo billionaires like Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen wanting to be kings of their own little fiefdoms is certainly uh, one of the nefarious reasons at play here. And I think that it's hard to calculate exactly how big, but I think that might be a big one. Another big one, clearly being indicated by this article and the statements by the administration, is that they want access to these minerals, right? And it's given me whiffs of Iran, of Iraq, of our involvement in the Middle East. I'm starting to get the smells of that again. That we're really just there for the minerals. Which like, look, I understand. Like, if you think about global politics, almost like a Civ game or one of these strategic games, like it makes sense. Um, you want to have access to these resources, especially as they become more and more important, both to strategic security importance, but also to like your ability to compete economically. Um, so like I understand the practical reasoning behind this, but they aren't coming out and saying any of that. They're trying to play coy and they're trying to hide the ball and pretend like it's for national security reasons or it's because of Mars research or something. No, it's because the billionaire weirdos around him know that they're going to make a fuck ton of money if that we manage to do the Freedom City thing or if we start mining these minerals out of Greenland. And that's ultimately what it always comes back to is that they just want to make their bag. And that seems to be with this whole administration. The ethos of the real ethos of this administration is all the grifters coming in and trying to get their opportunity to make their money. And that's really what all this is about. Alrighty, so let's move on to our last topic today. I've already been going for a while, so I'll cover this one quickly. Um, so I know almost nothing about this. I literally only saw the headline today. So I'm going to be learning along with y'all. Three children who are U.S. citizens, including one with cancer, deported with their mothers, lawyers and advocacy groups say. Three children who are U.S. citizens were deported to Honduras with their mothers last week, including a 4-year-old receiving treatment for metastatic cancer, according to the family's attorneys and civil rights and immigration advocacy organizations. In one case, a mother was deported with her 2-year-old, while the other involves another mother deported with her 4 and 7-year-olds. The American Civil Liberties Union and the National Immigration Project, among other organizations, said in a news release Friday. All were detained when the women attended routine meetings with officials in Louisiana as part of the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, or ISAP, according to their attorneys and court records. Taken together, the families' advocates say their removals from the United States underscore concerns about the lack of due process amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. We are seeing in real time due process eroded, said Gracie Willis, a lawyer and the response coordinator at the National Immigration Project, who represents the 2-year-old through a family friend acting as the petitioner in the ongoing court case. That is deeply concerning, and these cases are an illustration of that. CNN has reached out to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement for comment. CNN previously reported on the case of a 2-year-old identified in course of blah, blah. The judge said the mother was undocumented but set a hearing for May 16th regarding the child's deportation, noting it is illegal and unconstitutional to deport, detain for deportation or recommend deportation of a U.S. citizen, citing a 2012 deportation case. The second case is a close echo. The mother was detained Thursday after she took her children to an ISAP check-in in St. Rose, just outside New Orleans, according to her attorney, Aaron Hebert. The mother who has lived in South Louisiana for more than a decade but did not have lawful status, was asked to bring the 2 children and their passports to the appointment, Hubert told CNN Sunday. On their arrival, however, Hubert said she was not allowed to accompany the family to the meeting. About 20 to 30 minutes later, Hubert was informed the family had been detained, but officials refused to tell her where they were taken. Hubert later learned after speaking with her client 2 ICE officers were waiting for the family at the appointment. Hebert then went to ICE's New Orleans field office, where she said she filed a stay of removal she had prepared in advance of her client's meeting, hoping to keep them in the country. Over the course of the day, she repeatedly contacted the office to ask where they were being held, but said she was not given a response. Early Friday morning, the family was placed on a plane, Hebert said, and taken to Honduras. My clients were deported within 24 hours of being detained with no access to me, Hebert said. Attorney disputes government claim of handwritten note. According to Willis, both women had removal orders issued in their absence, meaning they had missed a court proceeding about their immigration cases, and a judge subsequently issued a deportation order. Something prevented them from being present at one single court date, Willis said, and because of that, the judge entered an order of deportation for them. In court filings, the government said the mother of the 2-year-old had requested to take her child with her to Honduras, citing a handwritten note purportedly written by the mother in Spanish. Trump border czar Tom Homan and Secretary of State Marco Rubio both echoed the claim in interviews Sunday morning. If someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then you have 2 choices, Rubio said on NBC's Meet the Press. You can say yes. You can say, yes, of course, you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child, Rubio said, or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. Willis, however, rejected the suggestion that VMLS's mother, who is also pregnant, wanted to take her child to Honduras. The handwritten note, she said, is not a statement of desire. Willis denied either mother was given a choice, telling CNN Sunday both wanted their children to remain in the United States. The 4-year-old, for instance, was still receiving cancer treatment, Willis noted. Additionally, both women had family in the United States, according to Willis and Hebert. These are mothers, these are pregnant women, these are children, Alana Odoms, the executive director of the ACLU of Louisiana, told CNN Sunday. These are people with terminally ill or very serious medical conditions who are law-abiding residents, who were checking in with ICE as they had been instructed to do under orders of supervision. If ICE can do this to these mothers and these children, if ICE can do this to students on college campuses, none of us are safe from this kind of lawlessness, she said. I think that's a good point. It seems to me as if if they're wanting to start, they're going to start towing the line about deporting people they don't like and potentially full-on U.S. citizens. You would start with those that are hardest to defend or have the inability to defend themselves, i.e., 2- and 4-year-olds, and with mothers who have illegal immigration status and um, are in a weird status with the courts due to potentially, and in this case, missing a court date or something. Um, those are the easiest. That's it seems like it makes sense to me, right? You go after the kids first, you establish this as a precedent, and then you can apply it to adults. It's much easier to start it with these kids than it is to try and start it with someone who can actually fight back a little bit, who can actually say, "Hey, this is wrong. What are they doing to me?" The kids have no ability to do that, and the mothers have no ability to do that. All right, so let's see if I can get through this last one before my computer dies. So this is covering the same one. Um, Border czar U.S. citizen child was deported in incident of girl removed to Honduras with mother. Well, she would have been deported, right? If the claim is that the mother wanted her to be deported with her, then she was deported, but it was her choice. I don't know if I need to see the evidence, but Trump. Oh my God, I hate all this. Trump administration border czar Tom Homan argued Sunday that due process was applied when a 2-year-old girl who was a U.S. citizen was removed to Honduras along with her mother, who was deported. Louisiana Federal District Court Judge Terry Daughtry wrote in an order on Friday that there was a strong suspicion that the government just deported a U.S. citizen with no meaningful process after the 2-year-old was sent to Honduras with her mother and 11-year-old sister. But Homan said the judge was due process, adding on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan that the two-year-old's mother had due process at great taxpayer expense and was ordered by an immigration judge after those hearings, so she had due process. Is he arguing that because she missed the court date that like she had her opportunity and that's it, and that anything flies? That's what it sounds like he's saying. Daughtry, who was appointed by President Trump during his first term, sought to arrange a phone call with the mother of the 2-year-old on Friday, but Justice Department lawyers informed him that a call with the child's mother would not be possible, according to court documents. Meanwhile, the 2-year-old's father tried to petition the court